Hello and welcome to another Random Wednesday episode. Now, this one is a little vlog / PSA. Recently, what I've been doing is I've been scouring the net for a particular special cable. In particular, this cable is an adapter used to change one type of video signal to another. Now, I don't know about you, but when I search for things on the internet, I might get a little bit distracted and end up an hour later looking at something completely different, and that was what actually happened in this case. To be fair, it was kind of close to what I was looking for, but it had deviated slightly. Essentially, I basically walked into a discussion involving, some types of adapters and why they actually don't work. Now, this is a pretty big issue, which is why I'm calling this a PSA video. You see, there's some adapters that basically is the cable you think you're looking for, but just doesn't work. And really, that is my key message, to look out for cables that look like they work, but they actually don't. But I'm gonna actually quote some examples as well as what are some things you need to understand to actually, make your research easier. Now, the first example I actually read about was an HDMI to VGA adapter. Now, if you're not familiar with how all these different video standards work, you might think that, it's a video signal, so it makes sense that HDMI can be converted to VGA, but in fact, that is not true. You see, an HDMI signal is a digital signal, and a VGA output is an analog signal. And that is why you will never find a cable that can just convert one to the other. They are just not compatible types of signal. Of course, it will be possible to perform this conversion if you have an active converter box. That is, something in the center that takes in the digital signal, processes it, and produces an analog signal for output. That's fine. What's even more subtle is something like a VGA to RCA cable. Now, VGA is an analog display standard. So what that means is, it makes even more sense that you can turn VGA into RCA. Except no. In fact, a VGA connector actually carries red, blue, and green information on different pins. However, an RCA cable actually mixes all these down into what is called a composite signal and basically carries both brightness and color information all on one line. In other words, VGA cannot be easily converted to the RCA composite video either, which means in general, a VGA to RCA connector will not work. Now, here's an interesting point. I actually entered a forum that was discussing this issue, and one thing was mentioned. In fact, apparently there are a very small number of devices that had a VGA port for output, but on a device itself you could push a button and basically the output on the VGA connector would actually change to something non-standard. In doing so, essentially you can use a VGA to RCA connector and actually get the RCA connectors to work properly. This is the excuse used by some sellers on eBay to actually, sell this kind of cable. And sort of not talk about the fact that it doesn't actually work with 99% of all the other equipment out there. So basically, we're bringing the element of scamming into this now. You will never know what an unscrupulous seller will try to sell you, meaning this is also a buyer beware thing. So what are the key points to note? Now, first is actually using some sort of your own logical deduction. Basically, conversion from digital to analog without any active component is basically impossible. So if you see a converter cable that claims to be able to do this, you should be quite skeptical about it. Obviously, if you don't know offhand, what each equipment actually outputs or takes for input, then you're gonna actually have to look them up. But in general, these are pretty standard things. For example, things like HDMI, VGA, these are stuff that you can find on Wikipedia. One notable exception to this rule is how you can actually convert from DVI to VGA and vice versa. The DVI connector actually has these crossed pins at the side, and these actually produce an analog signal. What this means is, all these pins actually carry the digital signal, whereas, the crossed pins at the sides carry the analog signal. This once again isn't foolproof. You might always find a cable or a device that actually doesn't take input from the analog side, or in fact has the pins altogether missing. So yeah, you want to be careful with that. Of course, another tip would be to actually read up about the cables, read reviews to see if people have been talking about these cables. Obviously, if people have been talking about using it and their usage experience, then you know for sure that this cable probably works. Watch out for common pitfalls like, if you're using 2 iterations of the same product. I was actually looking for an MHL cable for one of the Samsung tablets, and I realized that even though the 7-inch and the 10-inch version of the tablets actually have the same name, this feature was only available on the larger one and not on the smaller one. So yeah, if you've ever been tempted to actually buy some kind of adapter or converter cable, well, read up properly first. The whole objective is to prevent you from buying something that doesn't work. Be sure that something works, that someone has actually tested it and have actually given the testimonial before you actually jump in to buy it. So there you go. That is my cable buying advice for you. That's all there is for this episode, and until next time, you're watching 0612 TV. Hello, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, remember that I appreciate every like, favorite, and comment you give me. If you'd like to see more from me in the future, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And for more updates outside of YouTube, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at 0612TV. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.